Is everyone able to see the presentation?
Looks good.
So this year, I launched my first self-published game, Steam. I've made a lot of games in the past, but always been as some kind of contractor or just small games for people like wedding proposal type games or business games, learning games. But this is the first self-published game that I put out there for kind of the wider market. So I'm going to go over quickly who I am for those of you that don't know me. Go over the team that's been on the game, and then I'll go into a demonstration of the game and go into some of the things that went in there, what went well, the learning points. And then if there's interest, I could go over the marketing as well. I've got a full presentation on the marketing. But who am I? So currently I'm a senior software engineer at Smith & Nephew, which means I don't write any code there, but I do all of the architecture of the software. I design all the systems, testing, handle all the requirements gathering, verification, validation, and whole requirements trace matrix. And I do this all for medical stuff. So there's even more stringent requirements there. All of our electrical systems have to be IEC 60601 compliant. In charge of running all of that as well. And outside of that is where I have a lot of fun. That is game development. So for a little over 15 years, I've been a freelance game developer. I've got a small company, which is basically just a DBA called Mundane Games. But last year, around this time, I founded an actual studio, independent Dapper Duck Software LLC. And for Unity experience, I've been using Unity pretty much solely since 2017. Before that, I did a lot of assembly, coding, or C++, but now it's mostly just C# within. So I have worked on games for all kinds of different platforms. Some of them are published, some of them are not. Some of them are just kind of small projects that were used internally. But I've worked on a ton of things. In the AR, VR space, I know 3D media focuses a lot on that. I did do quite a bit with augmented reality for surgery at Medtronic before I went over to Smith & Nephew. And over there, I was working on a system to help doctors teach their students well. They had a bunch of residents in the lab with them. If doc's up there doing a surgery, use the AR headset to point out different parts of the anatomy, and then it would live stream to the students who were also wearing AR headsets. That way things would show up in real space on their headset, and they could see exactly what the doc was talking about. So here's the team that worked on this project. Jonathan Brooks, he's actually an author, and that's about where this game came from. Was I was reading one of his books, and I thought, wow, this would be an awesome video game. So I just kind of out of the blue emailed him, said, hey, would you be interested in collaborating on this? He was very excited about it. So we worked up a contract. Didn't have to pay him anything up front. He was willing to work on a kind of a profit share basis, which was nice. So I've worked with him, gone back and forth quite a bit, prototyping the concept. A lot of the characters in the game are all his ideas, as well as a lot of the units, which I'll show were featured in his books. But he's been very integral to the help of this project and the success of it. Testers, I had quite a few testers that helped out on here. And you notice the picture there. That's my son Elijah. And I will tell you, if you have the chance to get a young kid to test out your products, very valuable because they have no filter. They're not afraid to tell you how it is. And if you want to know whether your game's juicy enough or not, just hand it to a toddler and see if they hold it for more than 5 seconds. Because they are, they don't want to waste their time on something if it's not good. And they will give you good feedback. And Elijah, he found many ways to break the system that I did not even know were possible. So highly recommend using young kids for testers if you can. And next I got Chadwick. He's awesome 3D modeler. He did quite a few of the characters in here. Some of the units. I think that's kind of where he focused mostly. And then on the right is a contractor that I hired to work on kind of the UI and some of the 2D elements because drawing is definitely not my forte, and none of the rest of us were very good at the 2D stuff. So we brought in a contractor for those elements. I'll go ahead and switch over to the game now. And if anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt me. Much better for me if I was asking questions versus sitting here talking. So the game itself, it's you take on the role of what's known as a dungeon core, which is kind of a sentient dungeon, and you yourself are the actual dungeon in the game. So you lay out however you want your dungeon to look. You add in all the traps, you put all the monsters in there, and then you also have the ability to control any of the monsters as you try to defend it from people trying to get in and steal your treasure or whatever their objective is. The game also deals with a lot of the things you might not think about. Like you got a Zelda dungeon. What's to stop some bears from going into that dungeon and trying to mess things up? That's kind of where the story of this game takes place. I've got quite a few levels added in here. Kinds of creatures are trying to break in at different points. Story kind of mirrors first book of the Dungeon Core. It's not really a trilogy because there's a bunch of books. I think there's like 7 or 8 books now in this series, but the game kind of follows the story of the first book. Added in multiple difficulty modes, which really have a huge impact on the gameplay. And then, I've also added the ability to turn the story off because if you're playing through some of these levels, some of them have a ton of different waves to them. And you don't want to have to always go through the story every time, especially if you're going for a high score. The dialogue system, it's kind of limited, but it just scrolls through the text. I have a list of some more upgrades to this thing that were planned, but we had quite a few visual effects. I'm actually using the built-in render, so I didn't do URP, I didn't do anything else, just basic built-in render for Unity. It runs extremely smooth on my hardware, and my hardware is very old, 1030 in this laptop that I'm using right now, and it actually runs at over 60 frames, so it's very impressive. Works on old hardware. But the basic concept is that you've got all these options for building out your dungeon. You could add in treasure chests if you want, which kind of redirect the flow of where invaders are going to go. I managed to make this whole system work using the built-in Unity navigation system. I had a few doubts at first when I was trying to work through things, but I managed to find a few ways to tweak it to make it work. Get a bunch of guys coming in. So there's just a few actual nav mesh objects in here. There's one there. There was one on the treasure chest. Some of the guys have them, but most of the time they're sticking to that predefined path, so they're not having to calculate everything out. But if for some reason they can't get through on the main path, then they will find alternate paths and then create their own nav mesh objects. So it really helps. Some of the later levels, you get hundreds of guys coming in all the time. Situations like that is very helpful. But I added in all kinds of monsters and traps that you can put in here. Everything that you build, there's some automated actions that it can follow, or you can actually take control of any unit by clicking on it, reposition them wherever you want in the dungeon, or you can also click on them and then do normal controls. Each kind of monster has their own behavior, moves they could do, their speed, and as you upgrade them, stronger, faster, more health. I had the idea to come up with this kind of nifty little sidebar here for some of the more mid-core audience. The game is kind of geared towards casual gaming, but I did add in some mid-core elements, min-maxing stats, and not a whole lot, but there are a few related to that. Different creatures, their attacks have different element types, and the elements interact with each other to create different effects. More important when you get to like the hard difficulty, because on the hard difficulty, a lot of the monsters are immune to different elements. So depending on what's coming at you, some things will be completely ineffective. But that's the basic gameplay, is just putting things wherever you want them. You know, you could change the layout of your dungeon so you got creatures following whatever path is best suited for you, whatever your kind of strategy is. Maybe you want more traps, maybe you want you prefer the more active style. You could always do more monsters in here. Some of the people that have been playing, I've noticed a few streamers will take on a challenge of trying to clear a level with just one monster, where maybe you just put a snake in there and then you just control the snake the whole time to try and stop everything. That's a lot of versatility in the gameplay of how you approach everything, how you want to go about it. And on some of the harder difficulties, but your own monsters can be killed by each other, or traps can kill your monsters if you're not careful.
What y'all use to create the sprites with?
These sprites.
Yes.
So these sprites I made, show you actually, because what I actually did for them was created a scene where I just set up an extra camera.
Well, no, I mean actual creation of the sprite itself.
Yeah, this is what I did. I used this camera, came in, did a screen capture, and then went over to Krita, pasted it in there, cut out the background. That's how I actually made these. So pretty much all the sprites are the 3D models, and then I just reduced the quality. There were a few other sprites which I just had the artist actually draw them up, and he did most of the stuff, like the UI elements were all done in Illustrator. But the controls, though, over here, I've got different controls depending on which build you're running. If you're doing the Windows build, it has mouse and keyboard. But they show up over here on the left side, so if you select a different monster, it'll tell you what to do. Can't see it right now because I've got some of my development tools on here. But yeah, I'm on the development tools. This was very helpful. So there are a number of development tools that I made myself just to aid in making the game. If you've ever made any kind of tower defense or RTS or game like that, there's a lot of balancing that has to be done. So I created a few systems for being able to balance things quickly. The game manager itself, most of the levels, is just a finite state machine. So I made this one which just lets you quickly change the state, and then you can quickly change whatever wave you're in. Very nice for quickly changing whatever you want. If you want to test out a maybe story dialogue, make sure things are working, you just type in whatever number you need, or it'll take you right there. Story system is actually custom editor that I made for creating dialogue. I threw this together, I think last year sometime, and it was simple enough. I didn't have to make any changes to it to make it work with this game, which is nice. I was able to just take this existing tool that I had already made and then just use that. For my spawners, though, I actually created my own kind of assembly language. So I basically have a virtual machine running inside of the wave spawner game object. It just runs through the code that I have. Set of commands that I've created that things can follow. And then I have scriptable objects where you actually type in your code. And then you can compile it to bytecode. And then the virtual machine runs through the bytecode when the game's actually running. And it proved to be very efficient. Had no slowdowns at all. Didn't need to do any further optimization on it. So it was very nice because if you actually separate out elements into scriptable objects, you can avoid some of that. I guess some of the repository issues of people working on the same object together, because you could separate out scene from the gameplay. What you're seeing is basically just the layout of everything, and you have scriptable objects that control some of the behaviors. Yeah, I've got an achievement system built into the game that was actually extremely quick to implement. If you've ever done a Steam game, the Steam SDK is quite easy to pull in, set up achievements. It's basically 2 function calls. You just check to make sure the user is signed into Steam, and then you say, give them the achievement. The code base for the game is actually extremely well designed. There's a bunch of different systems in here, which can easily be plugged out, dropped into another game, no issue. A lot of the elements of the game are fine if you take things out. So if I remove the story object, the game will run just fine, no issues. If I get rid of the wave spawner, everything will run. You just be able to create any just trying to commit attack. Very few dependencies between different systems. So debugging, really not an issue at all. Anytime I wanted to add in new things, the existing code base was already very streamlined, so I wasn't changing more than 2 files. Kind of new feature. Same if I wanted to add in new characters or new traps, just be 1 code file that would have to be added or changed. The rest of the systems, like the shop system, it just works, just drag and drop. So I could just add in a new button into that shop system thing. One of the big lessons learned was just how difficult balancing a game like this is. I didn't have near enough time devoted to balancing as I probably should have. If you really want to make a game like this, you probably need to have at least 25% of your development time dedicated to balancing. Just play testing through different elements again and again. Testers, I put them on the team side, and it seems like that's just a small thing, but there is a lot of work that the testers have to do, replaying some elements over and over again. If you want a really tight design, like some of the early levels, you could notice that they're very, very well optimized with the way everything unlocks as you level up. But towards the later levels, I have enough time in the budget to really test those out and play them through as much. That's a really common thing too. Talk to a bunch of indie devs is that early on everything is very well polished, but as you get to the later levels, things kind of you just have to leave them as is, because if you're trying to do it as a business, you're not going to make any more money by further polishing something. Sometimes you have to let things go even though you really want to keep working on them. There's a lot of cut content that didn't make it into the finished game. Not because it couldn't be done, but just because another week, and all those weeks add up. Any questions?
Side comment, Joel. Your mic keeps ducking in and out on volume sometimes. On Discord, you might need to go in and disable noise suppression. Because sometimes I don't know if it's like you weren't talking or if it just like Discord ate your audio.
Probably Discord ate my audio. Where would that be?
It'd be under voice and a video near the very bottom. Yeah, there you go. Just turn off advanced voice activity, because they even put that comment in there that if it's having trouble picking up your voice, that's one of the things to turn off.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't want to jump in earlier because I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you should have. I don't know how
That
much.
sounds better so far. Like your voice is a level volume, whereas before
Yeah.
it was like up and down.
That's fine. We'll fix it in post.
Okay. That's the way to always do it. Speaking of post, I just used the standard post processing stack too thing, and it made things look pretty crisp. I really don't know how well it's showing up over, but it is really nice looking actually for what it is. Extremely low poly assets with just solid textures on them. It does look pretty good.
How was it working with an author licensing his material?
It was good. It was a fun experience. I learned a lot through it. It was a lot of back and forth. So, during pre-production, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction. I just kind of threw up some prototypes, sent some concepts his way, and he said, "I like this one. I like that one." But when we got into more of the production side of things, I switched over to running everything through sprints. It was not agile by any means, but agile-ish. So probably more agile than what most businesses. We just had 2-week sprints where every 2 weeks we just have a build. Whatever was done was in that build, and then I'd send that build over to him and say, "Here's what we finished. Here's what's in the build that's different," and he'd look it over, send his feedback. Some of the other things, we were more back and forth on story when we were writing the story, Google Doc. That way we could actively collaborate together on the story. And then after the story was finalized, I just made it from that and put it in. We didn't have to worry about Unity. What he was used to, which is just yeah, if you feel like doing any kind of licensed content or something, reach out to that person and ask them. I'm sure a lot of them would be more than willing to. I think I read somewhere that CD Projekt Red gave the guy's name. It was pennies for his story. I can't even remember what it was. I think it was like less than 10,000 licensed to Witcher.
Yeah, I think it was like 9,000, and dude was super bitter about it for a long time until I think just after Witcher 3 came out, they like reconciled and got him a better royalty deal.
Yeah, which they had no obligation to do, but kudos for them because that was awesome. But yeah, working with licensed content is interesting, but some IP holders are going to be more stringent than others. Jonathan was very willing to listen to any ideas I had and work with those. I think there's only a few times he actually said no to something. The rest was, "That's cool, but maybe if we tweak it just better in my mythos." So it was a lot of fun, especially since I've read his books. I really enjoyed them. It's like working with him on a. Any other questions?
So what was the process like for finding and choosing a contractor?
Great question. So, when I was a contractor, I know where I went to find work, and that's kind of what I did to try and find contractors. There are a number of sites. I could put some in the Discord chat if you want, that you could look at them.
That'd be cool.
But looking at their previous work is the biggest thing that I looking at what they've done, trying to find someone who's done something is more important. If it's someone who's going to be like a part of the team, it may not be as necessary. Passion is probably what I'd look for. But if you're looking at a contractor, trying to find someone who's already got the style or direction that you want. If you're looking for someone for music, try and find music that's very similar to what you already know that you want to have in there. But this guy, I think, the guy selected ultimately picked him from Fiverr. But I did have a short list of about 8 different contractors that I looked at. I weighed the pros and cons of each one. Which ones are most similar to what I was looking for? Which ones had best reviews? And then I plugged everything in my chart and said, this guy's the best, value for the money, best artwork. That's how I picked him. And he was really good. He was very responsive. Anything I sent to him, he'd respond within a few hours, day or night. Didn't matter what time it was. I don't think that guy slept. So that was really good. I highly recommend him if someone to do kind of UI elements. He did more mobile type things, but he was still good. What I was looking for, since I was kind of targeting that entry level, not really super hardcore type of game, his mobile type style.
So when did you start the marketing process for this game?
Yeah, if you want, I can run through my marketing. This one. Do this. It's a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't have PowerPoint on this computer, so I imported it into Google Slides. And since I'm traveling right now, some of the things don't show up quite right, but it's got everything in here. Just some of the formatting is off. So basically, like I said, I reached out to the author for the game. That was key, using that author. That was one of the important marketing strategies. This presentation just kind of goes over the promotion strategy of the game. So the full marketing starts very early on. Before I even made my first prototype, marketing was going on. And a lot of that is just looking at what kind of game you want to make, reaching out to people who've played those types of games, asking them what are the pain points, what do you like most about the genre. If you're doing kind of a mixed genre, like this game is not a pure tower defense, but it's tower defense-ish. I've reached out to a lot of tower defense players, and I also reached out to people who played more of a like active game. Like, if you can't tell, it's highly Zelda inspired. So I reached out to people who played kind of those types of Zelda dungeon crawler type games and saw what they liked, what they didn't like. Looking for repeated patterns, buzzwords, things like that that you could use for your marketing things out. Because if you reach out to someone and they say, it's really annoying in a tower defense game when you got everything set up and then you make one mistake, you die, you have to start everything all over. So if someone says that, then there's probably more than one person who has that as that genre. So then you know when you go in to make your game, that's the system you're gonna have to have. Some kind of way to restart waves. What I did for this was just basically copying anything that has particular script on it, saved it. That way I knew I had to recreate that. So saved it to disk, just created a binary file and encoded it. That way no one could actually tweak it for them or increase their resources. If they restart the wave, it just reloads that file. Whatever they had, wherever it was placed, everything comes right back in. But that's where marketing starts, is reaching out to potential customers, finding out what it is that they would want. If you're doing it more as a passion project, you may not need to do that, or you may want to do that. If it's a passion project for you, because you may works better for more people than just yourself. But don't let it drive your game itself. Use it to kind of shape the direction it goes. Another part of marketing is the product itself. Make sure your product is marketable. You know, making sure your game can create good GIFs. I'm not sure if you guys can see the mouse point. Making GIFs is very important, so you want to make sure you have gameplay elements that good. Post them to Twitter, you share them. But this presentation mostly covers a promotion strategy, one about promoting the game. Kind of the goal that I had was what most people would assume is the goal when you're making a game, is to just promote it, get people to see the game, and ultimately convert them into buyers. So, very important in your marketing is you want to have goals, something you can track to. You could know whether or not your strategy is working, if you need to modify your strategy. And what I used were just a bunch of different things. On the front end, whenever I put some kind of marketing piece out there, any type of promotion, impressions, conversion rates, those are very good metrics to look at. How many people actually saw what you put out there, that saw it, how many people interacted with it. If it's you're putting it on a site where maybe GIFs don't autoplay, I'd consider that a conversion rate, how many people actually clicked on the GIF to actually play it. If it's a link, that conversion rate is just how many people clicked on the link to go into the spot, your marketing funnel. Sales, really good metric to track because that's ultimately what you're going for. So being able to know whether or not you're hitting your sales numbers is important. Link clicks, I put it here even though I've got conversion rates here because link clicks very, very good, very easy to track as well. Nice metrics to put in there. I use Bitly for any link that I put out there because you could put it in there. You could type in whatever your strategy was or where you're putting it, any buzzwords. So you could go back and search through your link later and click on those links. Press coverage, very good thing to track. Putting out a lot of PR notices, how many people are responding to you, how many people are putting out articles, kind of reviews, stories, like that. And live streams, always a good one. Once you actually get your demo out there, or if you're not doing a demo, if you're just doing a finished game, you want to push your launch out a couple weeks and send everything out to some streamers at it. Don't send everything to streamers when you launch your game, because that does not give them time to create the reviews and get the buzz you need. Steam especially, because you need to get everyone to hit your page at the same time, right at launch, if you really want to be featured. That's something where this project failed. And reviews are very good for marketing because, like I said, your product is part of your marketing. There's like 4 Ps: product, placement, promotion, something else. I'm not much of a marketing person, but I know enough to get by. But reviews are the feedback to you whether or not you advertised a good value. Because if your reviews are coming back bad, that means you were saying you were going to do something more than you actually did. If you're getting mostly positive reviews, that means what your marketing material that you put out there, people were happy with that. When they actually got in to play the game, it was better than what they expected from what you put out there. So this is the metrics I use. So the strategies I used. This is not everything. Do other things like streamers. Streamers are a very important strategy, especially if you plan to launch a game and make any money on it. Something Steam specific is they got the Steam curators. And reaching out to curators is really good to get noticed more. But the basic strategy I had was to kind of put out promotions on social media sites, different things to draw people into the website. Once they're at the website, shoot them towards the email list. That way I could capture them on an email list. Social media is nice, but you can't control what everyone sees. There's algorithms behind every major social media site that says whether or not a particular user will see your particular post, even if they're subscribed to you. And if you watch a lot of marketing things, it's something that's a big issue for people that do social media. You're subject to the algorithm. You're subject to whatever that big corporation says is happen. You don't always want to be. Your success shouldn't be dependent on others. When you want to find ways to put the power back in your court. So I had a devlog on my website as well, where I was posting some updates. Devlog didn't get much interaction, didn't get much response, so I nixed that. So since I was basing the game of a book, that was one of my huge strategies for marketing, was going after those people who read the book. People who I know were already fans of the content. Putting this in their hands was something a lot of them were already asking for. So I was giving them what they wanted. That worked out very well. That was a great strategy. And then along those lines, knowing people who were interested in that genre of books, which in this case it was lit RPG. So reaching out to some of the lit RPG communities to share the game. Jonathan, we were able to do some cross promotion as well, where I'd be advertising his book with the game, he'd be advertising the game with his book, and that way we could drive traffic to both each other. So that worked out very well. Social media, I kind of focused on just Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn. Most of my social media. I'll go into. I'm not a huge social media fan, but I did what was necessary. And then the most important thing for any game is your placement, where you're selling the game, and making sure that storefront looks good. Because all these other things, you're trying to capture people, you're trying to show them your game to convince them, hey, take the next step. If they're at Steam already, or if they're on GOG, wherever you're selling your game, they're on itch, they're already looking to buy a game. So this is very important because getting everything right there, just the game. But everywhere else, you're just kind of pushing the next step of the funnel, and every step down the funnel. So Steam tags, getting your tags right, that's going to drive a lot of the searches to you. I had really good turnout from searches. People searching action RPG or tower defense. I had quite a few more specific tags in there as well. Those tags, when people search for things, drives them to your game very quickly. Capsule images, making sure you have a very nice capsule art, because that capsule art is what's going to capture their eye. Some people say try to do your capsule images to others in your genre. Some will mix it up, do something a little different. But know what you need for your genre. Since this is essentially a tower defense game, defense, name your game is for those kinds. gamers. So naming it the Crafter's Defense, but people know what type of. And then upcoming releases, people go to that upcoming page on Steam. A good way to drive traffic to your actual store page. I had quite a few wish lists actually came from people just browsing upcoming, and they like the images that scroll through when you hover over the capsule. Drove them into the page. I did not do the greatest with page presentation as I could have. Worked out great. So I had really good conversion rates from people going to the page and wish list, but I know I could have done much better just looking at it. The images I have on there are from early in development when I just had a couple levels in the game. So one thing I would stress is if you're trying to sell a game, Steam, keep updating your page as you add in more. Every time you come up with new things in the game, put them in there, gifts. Maybe look at some of the images you've already got on your store page, see if what you got is better. You just need to change things up. And always do A/B testing, because you can make a change to your Steam page and then wait a few weeks, see if it's performing better or worse than it was before. You could always change things back. But just do a lot of experimentation. So my content plan is where this was the bulk of my marketing plan. It was just how I was going to things, when I was going to do it. Big lesson learned here was that I tied a lot of my planned content for marketing to development of the game. So like this rolling automation here is going to be finished building, and that led to a lot of issues, because if for some reason something caused this to get delayed just a little bit, even delayed a week, now everything that was planned is delayed for your marketing. So I would recommend having some kind of buffer in there between your marketing strategy and your game development strategy. That way things don't get mixed up too much. Or maybe just balls to the wall if you want to. Just whatever you work on that week, put it out there. But that's always risky as well. Then this is something that was very, very useful. So I created my hit list, my high incentive targets, and these were people that I targeted specifically, sending them emails by name saying, "Hi, so and so, blah, blah, blah. Here's my game. Check it out." Type thing. Some news organizations, some magazines. These are where you're getting more than a 1-for-1 return. So if I'm sending it out to a magazine saying, "Here's my game," every reader of that magazine is going to get to see it. So you lose control, because you can't really control what a magazine or a streamer is going to say about your game. They're showing it. But it gets you much more bang for your buck. Your marketing is going to go a lot farther for your dollar. Speaking of dollar, I didn't put any more. It was just all manpower. So if anyone has questions about how to market their game or the strategies, let me know. So lessons learned. Twitter is not a good way to reach gamers. It is a great way to reach streamers, though. So if there's Steam content creators or streamers that you really like, interacting with them on Twitter, it's a great way to get to know them. Twitter also has a nice thing where if you go to someone's page and you click on the About Me, you can get to send an email directly to all the big people. Have their email on there. If you wanted someone from Gamasutra, you could go to their Twitter profile, click on the About Me, and you can find their personal email. So you can actually. But if you're planning on just posting gifts of your game out there, maybe it'll work better for you. But for me, it did not get much interaction. Same with actual links on there. I think the most interaction I got on Twitter was like clicks on a particular link. It was not very good for trying to draw in a crowd. But Twitter is also extremely easy to grow your following. So I started Twitter from 0, and within 2 days I was followers. But I just kind of gave. It wasn't doing what I was initially planning to do. But once I found streamers and people that captured their emails, a hit list, and that's kind of how I use Twitter. It's just kind of a searching ground to find where the best impact would be. Press releases, I didn't get them out early enough. A lot of them said a lot of my marketing was scheduled, so any particular thing got delayed that was supposed to be in that press release or whatever tweet or social media posts, that all got delayed. So it kind of website email lists. It didn't get much interaction that way. I don't know if I would do the whole email list thing again. You probably should have some way for people to contact you, because I did have streamers reach out to me directly through my email. But people looking to buy the game, I didn't get much there. The website itself, having your press kit on there is very good. You know, I created a website for the games. I think next time I have to have a company website and page for each game versus each game having a website. It does take a lot to keep up with the website, keep up to date, all the security updates. It's quite a bit. Especially if you want to be working on your game and then you got all these other things on your list. And then low impressions. That was basically the Twitter thing. I didn't get many people. So the good stuff. The reaching out to the book readers, all those strategies worked out very well. Huge turnout from them. Very huge. Conversion rates on everything I put out was high, no matter where I put it. So Twitter, like I said, most I had clicked on a link was 20, but that was actually a 50% conversion rate. Getting a 50% conversion rate is really. Same with my Steam page. I think I had a 30% rate from seeing it to wishlisting. When I launched, I think I had a close to 40% of wishlists actually converted into sales, which is really high, because I think most shoot around percent, somewhere between 2 to 20% if you're trying to estimate wishlist sales. Reviews, all were very good. Every review that I've had where I checked was positive. I didn't have any reviews, so that was something I was happy about. Sales itself, within the first day, I had already recaptured all the development costs. It was fully paid back for in. So sales went very well. Not quite as high as we were projecting, but I think that's mostly due to the marketing strategy, social media aspect of it didn't pan out. I was planning to. And then not getting the press releases out. We're supposed to go. Really messed up. Really threw off, because getting everyone onto your page at the same time, like I said, is key to getting featured on. And if you miss that, there's a huge cutoff, but whether or not your game is making thousands or if it's making 100,000. So trying to get everyone there at the exact same time is, which led me to learn why a lot of companies do embargoes on their reviews when they send things out. Something I never really thought about. Now it makes. I know with the next game I'll be able to put in that timing so I get there at the same time. Yeah, this is just a corny thing I had to put in there. the audience doing this presentation too. But if you build it, they will not come unless you have a good communication plan. Communication plan is just promotion strategy for which, like I said, it's just a small part of your motion. But that is it. Any questions?
For once, I don't have any questions. You're extremely thorough.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. Actually, out of curiosity, you think that we could see a copy of your communication plan?
I could pull up for you if you want to look at it. Hasn't been updated in a while, as most documents that they don't always get updated. Doesn't mean they're not valuable. Kind of where they start. So here's where I started. Here's my target audience. Here it says midcore, but like I said, I was shooting casual gamers, and midcore just there with minimum viable product. So this was the initial plan. I know Daniel touched on minimum viable product too earlier on what. Not everything that was here actually made because strategy changed over. This document didn't get updated. That's an issue like game design document. Did it? Still do those two because I like to capture everything, and most important, I like to capture things that didn't do a sequel. It's nice to have that somewhere. But minimum viable products, here's what was planned to go in, changed quite a bit. Usually it was 12 invaders. I think this being 25 invaders. I've still got a handful of monsters, trap concepts that we didn't put into the game, but the concepts are finished. We've got the art assets finished already. It was, like I said, tuning time to balance everything, put it in there. All the gameplay is done. They just weren't. Then moving down, here's your unique selling proposition. This is what makes your game different than every other market. Trying to capture your marketing cost, what you plan. Like I said, a lot of this come from maybe your ideas for the game, what you want it to be about it, or said earlier, reaching out to potential customers and pain they really look as you're on. And if you reach out to potential customers, don't try to sell them the game. That's not what you're doing. You're just trying to capture what it is they want. And then you build what they want. That takes care of selling. So then part what you think you're gonna make a game. I don't know. Discounts, sale price, how much you plan to sell the game for, costing strategy. I put in here if the game didn't reach our sales goal, I dropped the cost permanently. We didn't bother to drop the cost. Don't ever undervalue your game either, especially if you're going for a niche market, because everyone in that niche market is going to want your game no matter what you price it at. So put it at something that's going to make you. Don't just sell your game for $2. Game for $2 is what you should do and what you think it's worth. Let your customers tell you what it's worth. So sales strategies. When I put this together, I was thinking of sales strategies and dollar amount. Something I learned is that pretty much all the marketplaces where you're going to sell your game deal with discounts and percentages. So that's just something to keep in mind. Pricing is going to be, think in terms of percentages for your sales. Placement, where you plan to sell your game, that you're going to put it on. So itch, I actually put on itch earlier than anywhere else. Intentional. I think it was some GDC. The guy from Weather Factory, he talked about how he soft launch Cultist Simulator on itch. I can't think of the guys. They just put the game on itch without any kind of promotion thing. Let people say, "Hey, here's early access," and let them test the game for you. Feedback while you're developing. That worked out very well. Getting feedback from those users really shaped the game. And a plus side from that is that there's this nice equation that presented that showed his versions from itch sales to itch sales were 2 to 3% of Steam sales. That actually turned out to be spot on. My numbers after so Steam, iOS. I have the game fully ready for iOS. Because I purchased a developer account for iOS. I was waiting to see how things went before I did iOS. I'm still not sure if I'm going to port to iOS because I know $15 price point on iOS is never going to. It would have to be free to play. I have to work in some kind of ad monetization gem currency purchasing system if I want to have any success on it. But the game does run on phone, which was a nice thing because I could download the game to my phone and then if I was going anywhere with my phone, so I could just pull it out and show someone the game and see it. So that was neat. GOG, I ended up scrapping, put it on GOG. GOG, you have to have DRM free software. Mine does have somewhat DRM. Steam just decided I was Switch. We reached out to Nintendo early on and wait to provided great feedback on Switch, but they just really wanted to see the finished game first. Actually, allow us access to get. So, next steps, we probably will switch to Nintendo just to promotion. Where I talked about already, these are my strategies of how I was going to promote the game, where I was going to put it. Leads, how I was going to capture those people that were interested in the game. Initial strategy to drive them to the website. Yeah. No, it was great for getting some of those hit targets, but not for so much for actual getting. That's the actual text of the marketing plan. Hit list as well.
Thanks. That was again pretty thorough, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I took a graduate level marketing course at one point, and that probably influenced a lot of why it's all so formally. Because I went through that old textbook and looked through it and saw the things there. And I'm actually very glad I spent the time to do that. It took a couple days to put everything down, paper it out, but it was very valuable to have it to reference back to. I wish I would have updated it as a feature of documentation is never updated. So clean code there, documenting your. Any other questions?
Oh, that was great.
Thank you for the opportunity to go over my project.
Yeah. And I guess to wrap up, I'll share my screen. Got a little trailer that I've put together from all of our stuff that we've done throughout the year. Just Boink. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, it's just a little 7 or 8 minute video. And enjoy. All right, guys, guess that'll wrap it up there. That last part of that video didn't come out quite like I wanted it to. Oh well. Anyways, so yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for tonight. Next month is gonna be the Global Game Jam at the University of Memphis in the Fit Building. That'll be our first in-person event since the pandemic started like 2 years ago. We'll have another online event this when is it, the 15th, I think it is. We'll be doing an intro to Unity, just to get, new people up to speed on Unity before the game jam starts. And we'll have more on the schedule and whatnot for the Global Game Jam here shortly. So yeah, that's basically it, and hope to see you guys back again next year. And we've got a few other things planned for this coming year, so look forward to it.
That was a great video.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, there's a couple more that I got in that didn't make it in the video in time, but we'll throw it up on YouTube as well. This whole thing is going to be on YouTube as well. I don't know if I'll probably end up splitting the two postmortems and put them up separately on YouTube because YouTube doesn't like long videos nowadays. But yeah, thanks for coming out, and thanks for chatting with us. Joel, thanks for the postmortems, and also thank you, Daniel, as well. I'm sure he'll hear this. Yeah, see you guys next time.
Thank you very much.
Nice to be here. Thanks.